Public relations, marketing, and social media in healthcare requires making the right moves at the right time. Welcome to the Overrated and Underused show. Here's your hosts, experienced marketers Jen Jennings and Tom Testa, with special guest Adrian Stoner. Overrated and Underused, the Overrated and Underused show.
It's fall 2020, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Overrated and Underused. I'm Tom Testa, and I'm joined as I am every episode with Jen Jennings. Welcome back, Jen.
Good to be here, Tom.
I can't believe this. This is our first year of recording the show, and we're here in the fall, like I said. So, a lot still, I feel, kind of hasn't changed too much, since we first rolled our show out, in terms of we're still doing things virtually, right? The industry, virtual events, given, COVID still rearing its ugly head in the, and let alone the industry, but the nation. So, things look like they're continuing on the horizon. So we're hoping to bring some more great topics that people can do as you're, continue to work remotely and make it through this pandemic. And we got hopefully another great episode lined up today.
It's hard to think that we've been 7 months into the pandemic, where we've kind of all shifted and adjusted our PR and marketing programs to kind of really account for the current landscape of marketing in healthcare.
Yep.
But I think, this is where everyone is starting. Now's the time when everyone is looking at their 2021 plans. And, I think there's a lot of hope on the horizon, and that surely 2021 is going to be a better year than 2020 has been.
It just has to be, right?
Either way, I think there's, certainly marketing has not stopped. We are just looking at how we can kind of best reach audiences during this time. So
yeah, of course. And there's been a lot of great content still going out there from all walks of the healthcare ecosystem. Everyone's doing their part, still, getting out there and making some noise, letting folks know they're there. And I think, when we're back in physical space, I think everyone's going to be potentially even bigger and better than ever. Well, last episode we talked about awards and case studies, but because this episode is going to be focused on website trends, we're going to basically follow the format we did for the divisive design debates, where we'll start out with overrated tips, and then we'll dive into some underused ones. And I think this is going to be an important topic because I think a lot of organizations have had the opportunity to really step back and take a look at their websites.
Websites have always been the online digital footprint, digital brochure. This is your window to, your audience and, prospective customers or your customers. I mean, that's your digital brand. So websites are always important. We love to stress, the importance of having a nice looking, clean website that reflects your brand and is updated with, current content. And with all this, with COVID happening and, the canceling of like the in-person events and a lot more happening on the digital outreach landscape and, digital events and trying to drive more sales, through those type of interactions versus in person, I think it's even more important to take a look at your website.
Yep.
And see how you can improve it there, make sure that it's, up to date. But yeah, let's dive right in and talk about some of the overrated website trends.
Overrated.
I think the biggest thing I would probably start this off with would be custom design sites. It sounds great. I mean, doesn't it sound awesome?
Yep. Absolutely. Sounds amazing. I'll take one. For I'm sure just a couple $100, I can have that. Can I, Jennifer?
Yeah, it's actually buy one, get one free.
So you're saying it's overrated to have a built from scratch website?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think there's certain cases where it might be necessary. What we're talking about when we're talking about custom design site, this is where, every row, every page is designed and programmed, and a designer builds, the wireframe from scratch. And it can be great and it can work, but in a lot of cases, it's just unnecessary. There's thousands of perfect and beautiful templates available from builders like WordPress and, cheaper options on Wix or Squarespace. I mean, there's just so much out there that's really set up into these templates, but that the templates can be customized to your brand. I mean, a website is a wireframe of it's image boxes, it's text boxes, it's animations, like it's all just pieces put together. And to have a programmer or designer build this from scratch, I mean, I think there's some limitations that come with that. If you ever want to make changes down the line, they're usually not easy to make. Sometimes making simple edits in these custom coded websites are not easy. You need those advanced programmers, and unless you have one on staff, that's probably not the ideal situation for everybody. And so a lot of companies, when they're looking at a new site, they want something that's updated, style-wise, current messaging, attractive imagery for the user, and easy to update, to make edits, for anybody. But like with a WordPress, pretty much anybody, like I can do it. Yeah. I think when you say a template, it's like, oh, well, I don't want my website to look like everybody else's. But it's truly not the case, in that there's so many. You basically just decide what you need for your website and what kind of pieces that you want to put into it. And there's about 100 templates, if not more, than that, that will fit that exact mold that you're looking for. And everything's just kind of arranged in different ways. Like they each have their kind of intricacies. So it's just the important part of building a website is planning out your content, and then, picking the right template that's going to work for your current needs and then any future needs of the company. We've seen that a lot. A decade ago, a lot of companies would build a website, or they had a website that was built with this other company, and they're just not able to easily maintain it anymore. And then so it hasn't transitioned well into, okay, well, when we started this, we only had 3 products, and now we have those 3 products, but we've expanded into these 6 other service lines, or it's just you want something that's able to grow with you. And WordPress is great with that. So I feel strongly that a custom design site is not necessary, and not even to mention the cost. It's astronomical. But
no, agreed. So Jen, we were talking a little bit about design sites versus the custom design versus the templated stuff. But regardless of what your site is, something that I feel is extremely overrated are when you go to a website and that site is so outdated that people think that they have the best site, even though it looks like it was created back in 1999. Jennifer, what do you think?
It seems so simple to us as marketers, but it's amazing and shocking, some of the websites that I will go to for large companies. I mean, not, huge companies, but companies that should be focused on their websites, or should probably care more about that image that they have out there. But yeah, these outdated sites, and not to say that you have to update it every, build a brand new site every year, but there's things you can do to take an existing site and, refresh it in new ways, or add new elements, or just make sure that it's, has the most current content, and that it's, has active contents. Like if you have a blog and you haven't posted anything since 2017, then you really need to reevaluate that strategy, or why you even have a blog in the first place, or maybe take that off.
Yep. What I think too, when I see an older site, especially when I go down, I see that copyright. I think everyone likes to check the copyright every now and then. It helps you see, they're relative, they're recent, they're updated. But I often think, hey, if this site hasn't been updated, how secure is this site for me to be clicking around on here, potentially entering in my information into the contact field, things like that? Because as we all know, it is October, and we all know what October is, Jennifer.
We all know that October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
That's right. So I'm giving a plug there, but also at the same time saying I think that's why sometimes older sites may feel a little less secure, and with everything changing daily on that front. I think when you update a site, I think it's inevitable, or it's obvious for you to look at your security standards and making sure everything's up to par on that front as well. Probably less of a concern when we deal with healthcare, because everyone's obviously looking out, they're being compliant, whether it's HIPAA compliant or whatnot. But I think these dated sites sometimes speak to a potential lack of security as well.
So we're talking about these outdated sites, and I'm sure our listeners are like, Okay, well, how do I know when my site is outdated? How many years is too long to be having an existing site? What are your thoughts there?
I think you're really going to be on top of updating your site within 24 months to, I'd say at a minimum, to take a look at that, to potentially 5 years out. So I think in that 2 to 5 year range. But if it's a bigger site, if you're a bigger organization, you're continuously growing, you're going to want to update that site a lot sooner. You're going to have a lot of new additions, whether it's new content, whether you're putting out new white papers, new case studies, you're highlighting new customers, new features, new integrations, all that stuff. Again, that seems like a no-brainer, but I think to stay on top of things and to make sure you're fresh to potential customers, even the industry, I'd say, it's good to look at your website every 24 months. And I'm sure people are doing it even less than that. I mean, maybe 24 months is too long. Maybe people are doing it in some places quarterly, for all I know,
Certainly, I don't think everybody should be rebuilding a site and doing a brand new design and everything every 2 years. But in some cases that, may make sense just to follow suit with the brand as your company evolves, your brand evolves, messaging. You really want to make sure the site clearly puts your best foot forward. I would take an analysis of your site, look back at it and look at, competitor sites or, just kind of other sites within healthcare and the industry and see how yours aligns. I think, a minimum every 2 years. And then, 5 years for a website is a long time. So I think much changes in that time span that I think a refresh is definitely necessary every couple of years.
Yep. No, I agree. And you know what? Speaking of outdated sites, it's crazily overrated in my opinion, which always just gives me a headache and makes me want to jump to another site, is confusing navigations.
Yes.
Trying to make your way, you see those headers and you see all the subfolders and you're like, okay, yeah, all right, where's this or where's that, or this is not where it should be. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
This is something that it kind of goes around with the trends of, how websites are being set up, because a decade ago, when you went to any site, it was these long navigation menus and rollover and drop downs of so many different, sub pages. So, but now it's just everybody's trying to get their sites away from that. Now the current trends are more scrolling websites. So, it's easy to find the content. It's mobile friendly. You're not having to click through all these pages and sub pages and get to all these kind of dead ends. That's really where all the current websites are going is scrolling content, scrolling sites, simple navigations.
Yep.
There's a lot to have, within that. You can have, downloads and just different resources and blogs and everything, but it's just kind of in the way you house that and present that makes the difference.
Yeah, no, and I think that's where the marketers play a key role, because they say, look, this is the important content we need, and here's how we need it. When someone comes to our site, these are the 3 things we need them to see and know how to find right away.
Yeah, and I think this discussion kind of leads to another overrated item for websites, from my perspective, is building the site strictly for SEO purposes.
Yes.
And yes, SEO is such an important part of a website, but it's not what you want to build around. I mean, I think that the most important piece is the usability of the site, the user experience, and then, working SEO in as you can without taking away from that user experience. So, these long navigation menus and keyword stuffing and just a lot of the other things that can kind of go into the site is making sure you're using the right keywords and, naming your images and using the right meta tags, and all of that is very important. And, in most cases, it doesn't take away from the usability of the site, but there are certain things that do, the navigation just kind of is one of those examples.
Yeah. When it comes to SEO too, again, keyword stuffing, definitely a no-no. It's not as helpful as some folks think it is, but do platforms like WordPress help with SEO as well?
Yeah, there are plugins and different things that can kind of help guide you in some of that, as marketers or as you're looking at your messaging and just writing your website copy. I think like understanding the, key search terms for your industry, for your product is important to kind of include throughout the site as it makes sense. If I'm revenue cycle management, I'm not going to just write copy on the page just so I have revenue cycle management on this page 5 times.
Right.
I want to write the best copy that gets to the point. And so it's such a balance, and like it's kind of tricky now as we're streamlining these websites and the content to strike that right balance of conciseness and also being SEO friendly.
Yep. Yeah, and we've talked a lot during this segment. We're going to move on to another segment here, but we talked a lot about design here as well when it comes to websites. So for those of you interested in what we have to say on design do's and don'ts, definitely check out our podcast on divisive design debates.
If you are just tuning in, you're listening to Overrated and Underused on Healthcare Now Radio. Today's episode is website trends, and we are just about to talk about what we think as people are looking at revamping their websites, rebuilding their websites, some underused trends that we'd like to see more of.
Underused.
I think the first one I'd like to talk to our audience about and shed some light on is, and this kind of, I think, pertains to everything we do in life, really, but pre-planning. I think it's pretty underused when it comes to website design. I think a lot of folks don't know what goes into it. And I think trying to hit the ground running without having a good plan in place, it's not going to work to your benefit. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think any website project, whether it's just a refresh or, you're building a brand new site, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of steps, and they all kind of build off of each other.
Yep.
So not being certain about our messaging, or if you're trying to figure out pieces halfway through, it makes it a little more difficult and kind of slows down the process. So I think it's really important to take the time up front and really figure out the site you're looking for, what changes from your current site, you want to make, and really nail down like the elements and what you want to have in the site, and then especially messaging, and just kind of like what you're going to require of your site as you kind of build it out. And of course, things are going to change. You may see something as you're building it and come up with a new idea. But if you take the time up front, it just makes the process go so much smoother than having a hang up on one piece 6 weeks in.
Yeah, and I think part of the pre-planning side of things too is know your team when it comes to this too. I think this is something where the marketing side and the web development side, should really get attached to each other's hips here on this. They can help each other through outlining, what the site might look like, what's doable, what's not, to help with your planning. Because again, if you're coming with this great plan and you're the marketer, and you say, oh, gee, let's make this happen. Okay, good. We got to get this built out in 30 days. And, and then the website developer goes, well, gee, like this kind of isn't feasible, or not in that time frame, or how you want this done. You want more video here or less here. So I think planning out your team is I think, a big part of that pre-planning side of things.
Some companies, forget to look at initially is really analyzing your Google Analytics and taking a look at the demographics of your site and how more people are visiting you. Is it mobile heavy? Is it, are they on laptops? Like what type of browser? And really building a site around your audience, because, each company, each website is going to have a slightly different audience, and they're, something that their Google Analytics tells them. So that's important to do as you're looking at some of your site requirements and what you want to build out.
I think Google Analytics in itself could be a whole show on itself. I think it's super important. It can tell so much. It can be so helpful in terms of, are you using the right keywords and things like that too?
Yeah. And I think, we talk about like setting up initially, but analyzing your website traffic and activity is something that should be done as regularly as you can possibly do it. certainly, you don't have to be in there checking daily, but really just analyzing the trends across, period, and seeing what content is resonating well. And, and that's assuming that you're putting out a lot of, active content, but even just like checking product pages and
Yep.
to see what's getting the highest clicks in your referring sites. Do you have a heavy percentage of traffic coming from social, or where's your traffic coming from? So
Yep.
I think that's something very important that, sometimes gets lost in the wayside, but should be a top priority for companies.
Yep.
Clinicians Corner.
So we have been talking all episode about website trends and what's overrated and underused. And so a lot of what we say throughout the episode, applies to both clinicians and vendors within healthcare. But, I think there are some specific variances with, a provider's website versus, when we're talking about, someone selling a software, even more so with, providers and clinicians, you've really got to keep that regional focus in mind. So, easy directions, maps, hours of operations, and your SEO kind of around your local functions is really important.
Yeah, you're right. They're a clinician, most likely, potentially he or she may not have a ton of content on there that's downloadable. So you're not going to be worried so much on this big, expansive site that needs to host a blog potentially, or, for content downloads like white papers and case studies. So yours is going to be more focused, like you said, on what would people in my local community need to know about this office and when. So maybe it's a flu clinic and hours on there. And who knows, maybe it's even heavy into patient communication and engagement more than anything versus, content. So I think that's also something else that becomes more important for physicians on a more regional side of things.
Yeah, and I think probably one of the largest considerations around the website is, everybody wants to have a website and then they build it. And then in some cases, especially for smaller practices, probably forget about it, or they, had somebody else build it and don't know how to maintain it or update it, and it's got Times New Roman font and was built in 1997. But
yeah, I think you're absolutely right what you're saying about, that some of these sites are not set it and forget it, but some of these clinicians who maybe you're in office with 2 people and the website it's important, but it's not a top priority, or there's only one section of your website you really need to update.
Well, I do think that in some cases, a lot of people are unsure of, how easy it is to build a website that could be updated, like on a WordPress template, and, it can be updated by anyone. So I think, the important parts, you want to be able to offer all the information to your patients on, current hours and, directions and, new patient forms and,
right.
About your practice and about your providers and, all of that. So, really just putting yourself in, in the mind of your patient and why they'd be coming to your website.
Yep. And if the pandemic has shown providers nothing, it's shown them how important it is to make sure you can get information to patients and the greater community that you're a part of. Making sure you're able to update your website with that information, because you're probably doing it on social media. Maybe you're doing it on email campaigns. Maybe you're even doing it through, mailing, snail mail to your patients and stuff like that. But I think also getting information on your website quickly and times like these has shown crucial to a lot of these providers.
Yeah, I'm sure that there was plenty of companies out there
right.
that needed to put updated policies on their website or statements, and
absolutely
quickly realized that they weren't too sure how to do that.
That's right. I think a lot of folks are learning from the pandemic here and what that means for us across a lot of fronts, but even more so, as related to today's topic when it comes to updating your website to keep people informed in a timely fashion. So,
all right. Well, now is our long-awaited Inbox with Adrian segment.
Finally.
Inbox with Adrian.
So Adrian, As you know, we've talked a lot today about website development, website design. So I have a feeling that the question you've received from one of our amazing listeners falls in line with that topic, right?
You are so wise, Tom. It sure does. I don't know how you ever guessed it. So yes, today's question is, what pages of a website are best used to direct people to and from social media? I love this question today because it is something that I do see. You have something about a webinar and it just directs you to the website. Well, I don't have time or patience for that. I want to go directly to the information about the webinar. I want to, know what time the webinar, what the topic is, what date. I don't want to go to the website and have to find the link to the webinar to get the information I need. I'm not likely to come back and revisit that. Kind of goes back to what you all were saying, is how the copy on the website used to be pages long and drop downs, and now it's much more simplistic than that because their time is much more valuable these days.
Well, and let me ask this too, right? I mean, as a social media expert that you are, what you're helping, clients and everyone you help on social media do is drive that exact piece of content to the end user, right? So like you said, your social media too helps kind of cut through the clutter in some way of a website.
Right. Yeah. It just sends them directly to the information about the topic that has sparked their interest on their social media platform. They've seen a little bit about this webinar. They want to learn more. Here we go. Or you know what? They have been looking for this add-on for modifiers from their EMR system. And we're talking a little bit about it here. And they want to learn more because they're very interested in this. And this link is going to take them directly there, not to their, about me page. This is not the time for that.
And what about other pages that are helpful when it comes to social media campaigns? So whether it's a library of case studies, you can even do individual case study pages, things like that.
Yeah, of course. More than anything, it's crucial to send them directly to the blog that they're talking about. I like it when a website has a page that focuses on just that blog. You have the page and you can see the different topics of the blogs, and then you select the blog of interest and you go to it. Well, I'm going to use the link to the blog of interest for my post. So when the person reading it clicks on it, it's going to take them directly through it. They don't have to remember what they were just reading a little blurb about and try to figure out which blog post I was talking about.
Thank you, Adrian.
Anytime.
All right, that's all the time we have for today's episode of Overrated and Underused. We're sponsored by Anderson Interactive and can be heard weekdays at 10 a.m., 6 p.m., 2 a.m. Eastern, right here on Healthcare Now Radio. Email your inbox with Adrian questions to hello@andersoni, that's the letter I.com, or tweet us at Jen_Jennings, Tom_Testa, or Adrian_Stoner. And don't forget to use the hashtag #OverUnderRadio. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Overrated and Underused show with your hosts, experienced marketers Jen Jennings and Tom Testa, and special guest Adrian Stoner. Overrated and Underused.